the time has come to introduce you to our three performers in the flesh. I'll first introduce our wonderful baritone, Mark Billy. If you may reveal yourself from behind the curtain, Mark. There you are. Fabulous. Oh, look at that. Chad has mastered the applause emoji, as has Elizabeth. That's another thing I have to learn to do. All right, and then next, I think, Lara, if you're able to go ahead and turn your camera on. There you are.
Hello.
Hello, and Alexandra. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you again, all three of you. Absolutely beautiful performances. All right. So again, as people join us, bravi tutti, yes. As people join us, please submit any questions you have or comments. Compliments are welcome as well, of course. And wonderful. Elizabeth says, Mark, why aren't you at the Met? Absolutely. So again, any questions, comments, suggestions? I'm going to start us off with a few questions. Before I ask the first question of Mark, I'd like to cite a portion of the Music in Action Grant Program's program purpose, because it's relevant to that first question. Music in Action is a project grant designed to provide financial support for local musicians while addressing the greater need for hope, healing, and community exposed by the killing of George Floyd. Proposals should demonstrate the applicant's dedication to spark healing, humanity, and joy through the vocal arts. So Mark, given this program purpose, can you tell us why you selected these particular pieces, and in particular, how they relate to the program purpose?
Sure. Initially, I kind of did it in a backwards way. I looked at the grant and I said, this is something that I really would like to do and something that's really important to me as a person of color. And I said, well, what do I want to sing? And I said, okay, well, these are the things that I am currently working on. And as I kind of examined it a little bit more, I said, you know what? All of these guys that I sing, that I portray, they're kind of bad people and kind of cause pain and suffering in a way that we are still kind of seeing. You know, we still see some Germain and some Renato and these men that are doing these things today. And I said, well, that's awesome. That's the music that I sing, and that's related to this. And then I looked at it and I said, well, so I'm a Native person, and I feel that Native stories often go not unnoticed, but it's just not as prevalent as other stories. Do you know what I mean? So I said I wanted to get that out there, and this just seemed like a kind of perfect opportunity for that.
Okay, good. And so you were working on Verdi. That's why you chose Verdi specifically, because you could choose quite a few different opera composers, and chances are you'll run across despicable male characters in many of them.
Yes.
And sometimes the composers themselves.
Right.
Or other artists. Yeah. And ironically, for those who don't know, the theme, we don't normally have a theme, but this year, well, last year we had planned on having a theme for a couple of our sessions last year prior to the pandemic causing everything to come to something of a screeching halt. And the theme was, we don't have a better name for it, but we called it Art versus Artist. And the idea was, how do you reconcile the artwork, the beautiful artwork, the wonderful artwork of a specific artist when that artist has some character flaws, to put it mildly. And of course, of all artists in Western culture, Wagner is one of the most notorious in a lot of ways. So we then picked that theme up for this spring for the non-music in action events. Music in action had already been planned. And in a sense, I know this wasn't intentional on your part, Mark, because you wrote this proposal before you knew that we were even thinking of having this theme, but your choice of programming and theme fit well into that. I do have to say. Alex, there's a question, will there be a replay of the music available anywhere? By that, John, do you mean if you mean the recording will be on our YouTube channel for the foreseeable future. So if you're wanting to watch this very same performance again, it will be available. It's available now, actually. It's just until tonight, it was hidden from view. And then the introduction and the Q&A will also be available. There will be separate recordings, so you can choose to watch just the performance if you don't want to go through the introduction or watch the Q&A afterwards. You can watch them separately. Wonderful. Alex and Lara, would either or both of you care to share how Mark's choices resonate with you personally? Particularly since you're of the female gender, you may have a perspective that's different from mine or Mark's. And I know I kind of put you on the spot a little bit with that question. I
could say something. I think I unmuted myself, right? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. We can hear you.
Mark and Alex and I had a lot of good conversations about the theme that Mark presented this project with, and you know, I have to say, in opera, this theme of misogyny is a thread that's, I mean, it's kind of hard to find an opera that's not misogynistic, frankly. And so I think that that's something that in the opera business, us performers, you know, we're really struggling with, because where do we go from here with such important changes that we all feel are necessary, but you know, we're not sure where to go, you know, and love the vocalization and the storytelling and the arc and the architecture that opera creates, but not wanting to kind of perpetrate old thinking either. And so you know, there's no easy answer. It's just kind of a process, you know, and educating and creating new works, but then trying to figure out how we move forward with the old stuff. You know, it's an art of tradition, and you know, I think we all love the old repertoire for so many reasons, and we all are challenged by the themes of the old repertoire. And at this moment, I feel myself, you know, just as a woman too, you know, that really resonates with me as well. And it's just a conversation. There's never kind of like, well, this is what we should do. You know, it's just kind of a huge conversation that we all keep chipping away at and trying to move forward with integrity with.
That's especially true since the Me Too movement, I think. And then, of course, somewhat correlating to that is the recent interest in racial equity, and that has also taken opera to task to a great extent, because and I actually can't think of any of the opera companies I'm familiar with who have not been grappling with that since last summer. Anything else on that topic at all? All right, wonderful. So the next question is really for all three of you. And that is, well, it's actually something of a two-part question. I'm curious about your approach to collaboration. You all know each other. And I believe, Laura, you touched on it a little bit, that you'd all talked about preparing for this in advance significantly. But if you could talk a little bit about collaboration and what is it like to prepare a recital during a pandemic? I know this wasn't the only performance each of you did during the pandemic, but this was a recorded performance, and that may have had some impact on some of the decisions you made. But what was it like to prepare for a recital, and how collaborative did you find the process to be?
I can start. It was really cool to be, you know, after how many months, grueling months, you know, able to be in a huge space, you know, that wasn't my bedroom full of carpet, not singing to a screen or, you know, some kind of small, very small recording device. You know, Mark reached out to me, I think it was, what was it, November, October, with some ideas about rep, and it was really awesome to hear his ideas, you know, like ensembles that I'd already, you know, sunk my teeth into, but really getting to do them again in a larger scale, and like, you know, after being hungry to perform so much. But yeah, it was crazy. Kind of near the end, we, you know, collaborated. We started. Yeah, Mark, did you like, how many weeks did we put to, like, we went back and forth a lot on some rep choices, and like we came to like a couple different, like you know, we had a couple different variations on what we wanted to put together. But
yeah, the initial proposed program, I was trying to think, it definitely included some French non-Verdi stuff. And I think that was kind of, I don't remember, we just decided to do more of the Italian rep. It's just kind of, and I mean, and that's, you know, it's all stuff that we all love, I think. And that's kind of what was important to me as a performer, getting this kind of thing together. Because like she said, we're as performers, we're just like going crazy, craving opportunities to sing the stuff that we love. And that's what this was for us.
Right.
In regards to the, you know, doing this during a pandemic, it was very hard because a lot of these traditional stagings of these pieces involve Germain getting like close to her and maybe embracing her. And definitely for the Pagliacci, they would be, you know, probably kissing or something at the end. And, you know, we had to just kind of be like, this feels kind of a little bit unnatural to just reach out and not get close, but, you know, that's what we did. And, you know, another challenge was, you know, poor Lara back there has the mask on, and that just makes it so difficult. I think we were talking about, it was a little bit difficult to hear with it on, and just, you know, it's a hard thing, but we did it and it worked. So
it worked very well. Very well. Great. Before I forget, I comment I was thinking of making a moment earlier. We had Christine Gerke on an event we did at the end of March. I think it was March 29th. And when Christine and I were doing the planning for it, when I asked her a question about what's it like to perform Wagner when you know that Wagner is has some values that are a bit out of step with our contemporary values, and she found a really strong potion in how she saw Brunhilde and in the ring, because many of us don't know this, but the ring cycle, the end that we have with the ring, if you know the ring, is not the original ending. It's actually one of several alternate endings that Wagner considered. And only in the end is, in the final version of the ring, does Brunhilde really emerge as the heroine, and in the way that she is. And in fact, for the longest time, of course, the hero of the entire ring cycle and the individual operas that preceded it was going to be Siegfried. It really is, in some ways, from a certain perspective, a bit of a feminist opera. I know that's stretching things a little bit, but I found that interesting that she really saw some real gold in portraying Brunhilde. Mark, question from Jim. What drew you to opera? Did you hear any of it in your youth?
Yes, I did hear it in my youth. My mother was very obsessed with the Pavarotti phenomenon and the three tenors. So I remember those, albums being played in my youth, but kind of it was an eye rolling moment whenever it would come on when I was a kid. I'm a classically trained clarinetist. That's what I went to university to study, a clarinet performance major. And when you're a music major in school, you have to take oral theory, where you have to sightseeing classes. And they're usually at 8 a.m. and they're usually hard and nobody wants to be there and it's awful. But I could not sightseeing to save my life because you have to use solfege, and it was just a completely new and difficult experience for me. So I started taking voice lessons and to kind of help with that. And then people kept saying, I think you might have a voice and you might need to be thinking about singing more than clarinet playing. And I did the double major for a couple of years and then kind of realized singing is really more where I want to be. And it's hard being an instrumentalist because the technical, and I'm not saying that singing is not hard, because it definitely is, but it's harder in a different way. My first opera that I ever performed in was Lakme, and I performed in the pit. And I remember thinking, I would rather be on the stage where everyone can see me, not down in the pit where nobody really sees you. And you're kind of, everybody's in all black and you're a little bit anonymous in that way. But so that's kind of how I came to it. And I'm glad that I did.
We are too. Do you have ambitions to sing Wagner?
If it's right, but at this point, I don't see that in my future. Maybe Wolfram, but other than that, I'm not sure.
I was thinking when you're a bit older, maybe Hans Sachs.
Oh, really?
I think what made me think of that was Meg's comment about Michael Volle, who I heard sing Hans Sachs at the Met once, quite wonderfully. It's a wonderful role too. Very good. What happened? Can you talk a little bit more about Selena Not Afraid? I would love to know a little bit more about her.
Yeah, she was actually found, and she was found dead from the last place that she was, about 2 miles. And it's interesting because in that area, it's very, very stretches and stretches of nothing, and it was in the winter, and it was, as we know, completely covered in snow. So it would have been very difficult to find her. It really kind of, doing the research for this really kind of opened up my eyes to how bad it still is in terms of people, these women disappearing, and the record keeping. And something to understand is that, on these Indian reservations, the jurisdiction is kind of a nightmare because, it's not federal, it's not state, it's tribal police that have the lead. And many times they're underfunded and understaffed, and they just kind of have to operate with what they have. And it makes it so much more difficult. And the other part of it is there's a lot of racism that goes into those police forces. They, like I mentioned that they might say, well, she was just drinking, so, like, don't worry, she'll come home in a couple of days. And then that, 2 days is like so much she could have probably have been found had it been taken a little more seriously. And I'm hearing over and over again that it's not. And this Sovereign Bodies Institute that we've been promoting is a data, getting those records together so people can kind of operate in a more efficient way, because the record keeping is really horrible too.
Sounds like a good cause. It reminds me a bit of, it's the victim becoming the guilty party,
blaming the victim,
and that happens very often. Pardon me?
Blaming
the victim becoming perceived as the guilty party because they were drinking, or someone was dressing inappropriately and therefore asked to be raped. I mean, those kinds of things. Or George Floyd, the fact that he was an addict. I mean, those are kinds of things that run through my mind when I hear that. It's really terrible. Did LGBTQ plus enter into any aspect of the decisions or the production at all?
It was really hard choosing the people to kind of highlight, in the narrations, because there were so many different tribes in different parts of the United States, and different people, and the transgender people really kind of suffer, and are suffering maybe even a little bit worse, because there are a lack of protections law-wise in the situation. And even worse, there's racism and then homophobia on top of that. So it's just
right.
It's just a really bad situation. I'm really, I'm sorry to be kind of like a downer about it, but it is, I didn't know how bad it was.
Well, trans people are under attack in a lot of ways. A lot of rights being rolled back. And that's been a problem recently. I've got a couple other questions here. Jim wants to know, as we've seen, opera can present universal moral questions. Should the casting of operatic characters consider the ethnicity of the performers?
It's interesting. I was listening to a talk the other day of some artist management people, and they were kind of talking about, casting people and how they're making decisions and how they're encouraging people to just hire persons of color. And kind of my stance on that has always been, if I'm getting a role or if I'm singing something, I want it to be because I'm singing it better than everybody else. That's why I've been cast. I don't know I can't speak for other persons of color, but it's a very interesting time. It's a kind of a reckoning and a changing, and, I'm sorry, my cat thinks it's dinner time and he's kind of screaming, but I don't know how to answer that for everyone, but that's how I feel.
Okay. Lara or Alexandra, do you have an opinion on that at all, or? No? Okay.
I do, actually. I mean,
okay.
I think that, I think that opera companies, it's about more than casting for me. Like when I look at you look at a company, I like to see a diversity from top to tail, from every. To me, that's where the company is healthy. It's not just about what's on stage, what people see. It's about who's in leadership positions, who's on the board, who's donating, who's behind the scenes, who's in the booth, who's, publicity, everything. And that really tells the tale for me. I mean, and I think that, the way that opera, the business of opera, the way that it has been done traditionally needs to change, really, in order, if the companies want to be healthy. The business, it's not just what we see on stage, it's so many layers. And I think it would be great to just, keep on that conversation and really kind of have accountable companies and transparency, really, so that people can see that the art really reflects the communities that they're in, which is, I think, the biggest, a big question. It's not always happening. So that's kind of the way I gauge the health of a company.
And
great observation.
There's a lot of this tokenism. A company will have one of their young artists as a person of color, and then they kind of go and say, look, we're diverse. But that's just a very weak Band-Aid, I think, for the issue. There's a lot of work to be done. And I think it's starting, but it's going to take time.
Yes, Minnesota Opera is working toward that level of diversity. Mark and Alex, can you tell us what it will be like coming out of the pandemic? This is from Sigrid Redpath, and how it has affected your future bookings. What would you like the public to know about help or consideration you could use as you try to regain your footing in the job market?
Hey, Sigrid, great to hear from you. I have been really fortunate to have access to virtual competitions. Everybody went completely virtual. But that did not stop the, enthusiasm and integrity of companies and smaller organizations, promoting young artists and giving them opportunities to perform. For me, I feel like I'm coming out stronger in the, I guess, like performing for camera department, which wasn't, like everybody's intention. But yeah, I think that was a major thing for me. And as far as, future bookings go, I mean, I just came out of the young artist, place, and there was a good amount of stuff on the horizon. But yeah, I think as far as what we need to have the public know, it's happening. It's coming back. It's slow, but it's coming. It's definitely, things are filling up. People aren't losing interest. Some people are saying that, but it's not true. So that's been my experience. What about you, Mark?
I've been very fortunate as well. I'm a very seasoned church musician, singing in Catholic churches and Methodist churches and Lutheran churches, just really kind of every opportunity that I could grab during this time, because usually it's not possible. Usually I'm, able to do maybe one church gig a weekend, but with, my availability being open, it's been kind of great for that. In terms of what can we all do to help the situation, I think generous support to all kinds of creative projects is what will help the most. If you hear about a chamber ensemble doing a show, I can't even, I'm just an obscurity, you know what I mean? Like creative and obscure projects need to be supported, because once we come out of the pandemic, I think a lot of it's going to be, whenever that might be, I think a lot of it is going to be focused on smaller ensembles and chamber music. And I think that's where it's going to be for a while before big, huge productions come back.
Yeah, for sure. I think also just you know, these small programs that people have put together who weren't necessarily performing a lot before, singers, you know, them emerging with that, I think really shone a spotlight on, yeah, smaller projects. So I think knowing that those are important too, those are very important, and have been kind of like the stabilizers in through COVID and this whole time. So just knowing that big or small, it's all art in the end.
Totally.
I know that even prior to the pandemic, chamber opera was really doing quite well, in particular at some of the regional opera companies, and contemporary opera as well has really been flourishing. So, and that's one of those areas where I think we can, you know, we can downsize from grand opera very effectively and produce intimate productions, and oftentimes ones that address contemporary issues in ways that aren't necessarily overtly addressed in something from the 18th or 19th centuries. Speaking of that, Mark, do you know, is Edward Tulane going to be coming back to the Minnesota? Not so coming back in that I know it was ready to go on stage when the pandemic canceled all the performances.
So that is the official word, is that it is going to be performed in a upcoming season. Not sure. However, I'm kind of, you know, lots of this pandemic stuff the pandemic has been recording and how to record so many bass parts every week for different things. It's really helped my sight reading skills. But part of it for Edward Tulane is that recording what they call a choral suite. The composer has put together all of the really truly the hardest music I've ever seen, opera chorus together, and we're recording that choral suite. And I think it will be performed in maybe December the 16th. I'm not sure if I can't remember that, but a December performance from Minnesota Opera. And I think it's going to be a children's concert where there's going to be animation, and I think maybe a light show. Don't quote me on that, but that very, very robust performance with our recorded voices.
Okay. Alex, this is from our board member, Elizabeth Ambrose. You were terrific in the Minnesota Opera Ring production. Can you talk a little bit about your experience in that production? That's Rheingold.
For sure. Hey, Elizabeth, thank you so much. It was a really fun production with Brian Stauffenbiel directing. It was my first Wagner, I guess. It's kind of a lie. I did a scene in Meistersinger at Santa Fe Opera, but really, really cool production. You know, the budget was a little smaller, but Brian was able to take this, you know, like really big risk to put the orchestra on the stage and make the pit into, you know, the river. And it was so visually, aesthetically pleasing and fun to, you know, put together. But yeah, it was a blast. Huge voices, incredible people, veterans that I got to work with, Greer Grimsley and Denise Graves and a handful of others that just been doing that music for so long, and being a young artist and just sitting there and taking it all in. Of course, being back at my, you know, home company, coming back to Minnesota, and like, you know, being in such a large scale production, again, it was really cool. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I'd love to be part of another ring somewhere. So that was really fun.
Yeah, I flew back from Long Beach, California for the production, just for that production, and it was really, I was quite impressed. I knew that the pit was a little too small for a true Wagnerian orchestra, and when I found out that they were putting the orchestra on the stage, I thought, well, I've got to see this. It worked very, very well.
It did, yeah.
A final question. Do either of you perform art song recitals? Can you comment on the difference in singing art song versus opera?
Yeah, I've done a handful in my day. In high school, I don't know if anyone knows Geneva Eschweiler, but she was premier voice teacher, vocal teacher when I was in high school around 2010. But she passed away about 2 years ago now, wonderful lady. But anyway, she would put on recitals for her students, or have her students put on recitals at the end of each high school year. And so I got to do a full-fledged recital, and they're just like really, really fun to perform and prepare and program if you are in control, if you have knowledge on how to put them together and curate that kind of thing. But I had a lot of experience doing that there. I'd come up with like hour and a half long programs, and it was so fun, just all these different genres and everything. But yeah, I don't know, Mark or Lara, if you I love programming things. It's really fun, and it's different than I guess singing different than singing opera for sure. But I always use my operatic voice when I'm singing either one. I try to. So yeah, how do you guys look at it?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
No,
I was just going to say that what we say that opera is like painting a house and art song is like painting the picture. It's kind of the difference. Mark, sorry to cut you off.
No. I totally agree with that. And, I agree, especially with what Alex said about singing with your opera voice. Like, because there's so many schools of thought about art song that you kind of have to back off and, sing maybe off the voice. And I love singing art song. I try to do at least one recital of brand new art song a year to keep because it's really the styles that keep you interested. I'm performing a recital in October at a university in Wisconsin, and we're going to be doing some Poulenc and I think Rachmaninoff, and I almost have more fun doing programming those things than I do, going in opera role, because you're in control and you're like, you know what, this is really awesome suiting my voice, and I get to act in a way that I probably don't with certain characters. Yeah. It's just, you're in control of the artistic part of it, and it's really fun, I think.
Yeah, and when you get to you find the pieces that follow you for your whole life, you take with you, they're there. And for me, the hot composers for that are definitely Britten and Rachmaninoff, and probably Richard Strauss. Yeah, those are sign me up.
What about you, Laura? You've rated on just a few art songs. Do you have a favorite composer or composers or song that follows you? Or
Strauss is pretty great. Strauss wrote some pretty great songs, I've got to say. It's hard to choose. It depends on my chapter of life, I've got to say. It's changed. Yeah. It changes every couple of years.
And last one, Mark, do you have any favorites?
Actually, it's funny. I sing Strauss too a lot, but obviously not in the same keys. So it's really funny whenever I take a Strauss song to a pianist, they're like, I've never seen this key before. Particular song, but I love singing in French. I love singing Strauss. I really, really love singing in Russian. I wish I were better at it. It's hard, but and I love singing in English too. I love Samuel Barber songs.
Terrific. All right. I'm just taking one last look. I don't see any other questions. So I would like to take a moment just to thank everyone for dedicating their time to supporting our local artists tonight. You didn't have to pay any admission for this, but you have supported them in a number of ways. One of them is just simply by attending tonight, by spreading the good word about their talents, their enormous talents. And we also appreciate all the support that you will give in the future and have given in the past as we all emerge from this pandemic. If you have a little left over and want to contribute, again, please consider donating to Sovereign Bodies Institute. That's sovereign-bodies.org/donate. And within the next 24 hours or so, I'll be sending out a follow-up email containing a link to a very, very brief survey. It was really instrumental in helping us improve tonight's production versus the original one. The original one went very, very well, but we got some great suggestions and fine-tuned some things that I think worked even better this time. So it's very important. It's really brief. It's mostly multiple choice. There are some fill in the blank or text. If you want to be more verbose, you can be more verbose, but you don't need to be. Again, if you can complete that while your memory is still fresh of tonight's event, that would be terrific. Finally, I'd especially like to thank everyone who made tonight's program possible. Mark, Alexandra, and Lara, if you can all just take a bow for a wonderful, wonderful performance. A virtual bow is fine. Thank you so much. It was a real joy to discover the beauty of your music tonight. Jim Richardson, our man behind the curtain, who handles our technical side of things with Zoom and all other things IT, including I see Jim is applauding himself. Very well done, Jim. Thank you. Justin Spenner. Some of you know Justin. Justin's a local tenor, and Justin was extremely helpful in, pardon me?
He's a baritone.
Sorry, baritone. Thank you. He was extremely helpful in helping us put this entire Music in Action grant program together. It was something we had never done before, and he had a lot of expertise in not only singing, but also in dealing with grants. And he really worked very hard with us to put this together. A friend of ours from the Minnesota Opera, Pablo Siqueiros, was our celebrity guest panelist on the judge panel. And of course, also our board of directors, without whom this would not have been possible. And especially, again, thanks to all of you for joining us and supporting your local musicians. Before you go, a shameless plug for our final event of the spring 2021 season. On Sunday, May 23rd at 2 p.m., please join us for Wagner the Revolutionary, a conversation with Andrew Whitfield. As many of you know, Andy is Minnesota Opera's associate conductor and chorus master. In fact, he's in town right now working on Albert Herring. What you may not know is that Andy is a living, breathing encyclopedia of all things operatic, but especially of all things Wagner. And in that presentation on that Sunday afternoon, he will examine Wagner the Revolutionary and how his politics manifested in the Ring cycle. And that is all I have for tonight. It's been a really healthy 2 hours and 20 minutes. Thank you all for joining us, and have a wonderful, wonderful spring weekend. Take care.